History remembers him as the president who saved the United States during its darkest hour. Tall, serious, thoughtful, a man of powerful words and quiet determination. But behind that familiar image was a life filled with strange details, eerie coincidences, and unexpected stories that most people never hear. Some of them sound almost unbelievable, from prophetic dreams to assassination plots to a wrestling career and even a mysterious invention. The life of Abraham Lincoln was far stranger than the history books usually tell. Welcome to Deep Waters, where we explore history, power, and the structures behind our world, here, there, and in between. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and become part of the stories we uncover here as we dive deeper into the ideas and events that continue to influence human civilization. Now, let's begin. Only a few days before he was assassinated in 1865, Lincoln shared a disturbing dream with several friends. In the dream, he wandered through the White House late at night. The halls were silent, but somewhere in the building he heard people crying. He followed the sound into a room where a corpse lay inside a coffin. Soldiers stood guard while mourners gathered around. Lincoln asked one of the guards, "Who has died in the White House?" The guard answered, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." This story was later recorded by Lincoln's close friend and bodyguard, Ward Hill Layman. Whether it was coincidence or something more mysterious, the dream would become one of the most chilling stories surrounding Lincoln's final days. Before he was a politician, Lincoln had a very different reputation. He was known across his Illinois frontier community for his extraordinary strength. Standing about 6 feet 4 inches tall, he was much taller than most men of his time. He often competed in wrestling matches against local challengers. According to historical accounts, Lincoln fought around 300 wrestling matches and lost only once. His most famous match took place against a local champion named Jack Armstrong. The contest was fierce, but Lincoln ultimately won and earned the respect of the entire town. Today, Lincoln is even recognized by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame for his wrestling career. Not exactly the image people usually imagine when they think of a president. Before law school, before politics, Lincoln had another unusual job. In the 1830s, he co-owned a small frontier tavern in Illinois called Berry and Lincoln. The tavern served travelers and locals with food, whiskey, and lodging. Running the business was not easy. Lincoln's partner struggled with alcoholism, and the tavern eventually failed. But the experience gave Lincoln something valuable. It taught him how to talk with people from every walk of life: farmers, merchants, soldiers, and travelers. Skills that would later serve him well in politics. Lincoln had another unusual distinction. He remains the only president in American history to hold a patent. In 1849, Lincoln invented a device designed to help boats pass over shallow river obstacles. The idea came from his experiences traveling along rivers during his younger years. The device used inflatable chambers to lift boats over sandbars. It was never widely used, but Lincoln was proud of the invention, and he remained fascinated by science and technology throughout his life. Many of Lincoln's friends described him as a man who sometimes carried deep sadness. He often spoke about feeling what he called melancholy. At times, the sadness could become overwhelming. Friends worried about him during difficult periods in his life. Historians today believe Lincoln may have suffered from what we would now call clinical depression. But strangely, this emotional depth also shaped his leadership. His understanding of suffering allowed him to connect deeply with others. It may even have strengthened his compassion during the brutal years of the American Civil War. Lincoln also had a surprising side. He loved telling ghost stories. Friends recalled that he often entertained guests late into the night with strange and eerie tales. Ironically, after his death, Lincoln himself became part of ghost stories. Over the years, numerous people claimed to encounter Lincoln's ghost inside the White House. Even Winston Churchill reportedly experienced something unusual. Churchill later joked that after stepping out of a bath one night, he saw Lincoln standing near the fireplace. Startled, Churchill reportedly said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Then the figure disappeared. Whether these stories are real or legend, they have become part of Lincoln's strange legacy. Not everyone waited until 1865. Long before the final shot, Abraham Lincoln was already a marked man. As the Civil War raged, he became one of the most hated figures in America. Threats came constantly: letters, rumors, warnings. Some were empty, others were real. In 1861, before he was even inaugurated, a plot was uncovered in Baltimore. The plan was to kill him during a crowded train transfer, but Lincoln slipped through the city at night, disguised, avoiding the assassins. He survived, but the danger never left. More threats followed. Some failed. Some were never fully known. By the end of the war, Lincoln had already escaped death more than once. But history only needs one moment, and this time, there would be no warning. When people imagine Abraham Lincoln, they picture a deep, commanding voice, strong, heavy, presidential, but that's not what he sounded like. Accounts from those who heard him speak describe something very different. Lincoln's voice was high-pitched, thin, almost sharp. At first, it surprised people. It didn't match the image, but Lincoln understood something powerful. A high voice could carry. In large crowds without microphones, his words traveled farther than most. Clear, cutting through noise, people could hear him even from a distance. And once he began to speak, the voice no longer mattered, because the words did. In a time before technology, before amplification, Lincoln didn't need a powerful voice. He needed a voice that could reach people, and it did. Abraham Lincoln was not known as a superstitious man, but those closest to him noticed something unusual. He often spoke about what he called premonitions, a quiet sense that certain events were already set in motion. In the final days of his life, that feeling seemed to grow stronger. He spoke more openly about dreams, about strange impressions he could not explain. At times, he even hinted that he did not expect to live long. Just days before his death, he told those around him that he felt a kind of calm acceptance, not fear, something closer to readiness. To some, it sounded like exhaustion, the weight of war, the burden of leadership. But to others, it sounded like a man who had already seen what was coming, because when the end finally came, it did not feel entirely unexpected, not to him. Even after his death, Lincoln's story took another strange turn. In 1876, a group of counterfeiters attempted to steal Lincoln's body from his tomb. Their plan was bizarre. They intended to hold the body for ransom and demand the release of a skilled engraver who had been arrested for counterfeiting money. Secret Service agents infiltrated the group and stopped the plot before the coffin could be removed. After the incident, Lincoln's remains were secretly moved several times to prevent future theft attempts. History remembers Abraham Lincoln as a great leader, a president who preserved a nation during one of its darkest periods. But his life was also filled with strange details. A wrestler on the frontier, an inventor with a patent, a man haunted by dreams, a storyteller who loved ghost tales, and a figure surrounded by coincidences and mysteries even after his death. Perhaps that is why Lincoln continues to fascinate people today, not just as a historical figure, but as a human being whose life was far more unusual than the textbooks ever reveal.